What's up everyone on YouTube? MainManSWE here, hoping you're all doing awesome as always. Am I actually recording? Yes, I am. I hope everyone's doing great and staying healthy. Me, I've got a cold, so my voice might give out, you know. But I'm gonna try and do this. We're looking at Arslan Ash's tier list. It's really cool, and it's not an image here. I've actually recreated it. He made this. This is arguably the greatest scrub in the world. Arslan? The people want to see main man's tier list, not this scrub. This Arslan scrub. Now that's what the people are saying. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, Arslan to me is the best player in the world. So it's like, it's with great humility I approach this, and I just want to give my opinion on it. He's the best player in the world. I just like to analyze the game. I find that to be interesting. I'm nowhere near his play level, you know. He would 30 owe me. Really, I have the utmost respect for Arslan. So for entertainment purposes, I'm going to take a look at this, and it's pretty interesting to talk a little bit and analyze, because I feel like a lot of the time when I watch these pro players give us tier lists, they don't really explain things. They just give you a picture and you're like, okay. This is better than me doing an updated tier list. A lot of people have asked me to update my old Season 3 tier list, but I'm just going to wait for Season 4, so we'll do this in between. I'm going to look at King Jizz as well, just to have something completely different to analyze. It's going to be interesting. But so looking at this, like immediately, it's very hard to disagree with the top row. This is pretty much 100% exactly like how I would rank these characters, the top 10. And it's worth pointing out that Arslan said that this is in no particular order. He just ranks these as S, these characters an A, but the placing of the characters here does not matter. He's not saying that Fakum Ram, then Jin, then Devil Jin. He's not being that specific. But it's hard to argue this. I would say, yeah, Akuma probably still the best in the game, but you would say Fakum Ram prior to the sidestep nerf. But again, you can, this character just has unlimited potential still. As soon as he has bar, he just breaks the game. But this is if the pilot, the player, is strong enough. Very, very hard to play. But all of these, I gotta say I concur, although there are some question marks in my opinion that would be nice to hear his reasoning about. Devil Jin is the character here I'm the most like inclined to say he could maybe jump down. But you could argue he stays. But if there's one character here I could argue we could drop down, it would be Devil Jin. And on the characters below here, interesting of course is Eliza, which is something we've just recently learned is a force to be reckoned with. If you look at classic Korean tier lists, or not even old Korean tier lists, she's here. She's like bottom 5. But yeah, if you just look at her frames and her Tekken normals, she's not very good. And I think that's what Koreans do. They're like, how's the poking? Gotta play safe. And she's not about that. She's about getting bars of meter and then doing 2D bullshit. And she's really good at the 2D bullshit. But yeah, there's a balance in the character in that terrible frames on the normals, 2D bullshit, double thumbs up, it's great, but requires a lot of execution. Pakistanis are great at 2D, so I don't know too much about the character. I'm going to have to trust him there. But she's definitely not here. Yeah. Lee has been underrated for a long time. He's actually insanely strong. And this is something I can elaborate a little bit on, as a lot of people are not familiar. He has great pokes. He has a great down forward 1. His keep out is some of the best in the game with back 4. Excellent magic 4. Down forward 2. He has a 50-50 with the while standing 2 mix-ups. His slide. He has some good low pokes, down back 3, down back 3+4. His combo damage is great. His wall travel is great. The counter hit game overall is strong, including the down 3. If you're good enough, you know, that's a low launcher. His punishment is excellent. He has the best 10 frame punisher in the game, 50 damage. Acid rain, again, if you have the execution. It's like, no one is gonna say he's easy, But if you have the execution, you really have some crazy stuff with Lee. So I'm gonna try and keep it short, but the character has some great stuff, you know, and his 2-2-3, his magic 4 alone, you know, if you do the dual kicks, bap bap, what is it, like -6, -5 on block? JLs, right? It's like, yeah, execution barrier, but man, has he been underrated. And the back 4 alone with its recovery these days. So this is an underrated character, for sure. Marduk is a monster. Law is interesting not to see up here, because that's a character a lot of top players like, he is top 5 if you play him, you know, if you play him perfectly, but no one ever does. So Law is this like imaginary top 5. I've seen, you know, Ninja Killa or Hisham. Is he from Saudi Arabia, I think? Sorry if I get the country wrong. But I've seen some people access God Law with perfect, you know, DSS cancels every time. But no one really does that in tournaments. So this is kind of nice to see a very grounded tier list approach to Law. Arslan is basically saying here, yeah, AI here, but in reality here. So I like that. Brian is really good, really good. Dragunov, really good, but yeah, he's not top 10 anymore. The other characters have just surpassed him. Everyone keeps getting buffed except for Dragunov. And the Wild Running 2 losing its tracking, it's like, that was a big deal. You know, that was a big deal. So Dragunov still very strong and all around, but he's not top 10. Shaheen, also a character you could... Honestly, these two are probably the characters where I would go more like... Especially Alisa is insane. So this is where I honestly would be the most inclined to honestly place her here. But, you know what? We can agree to this. Nothing too crazy. But where I do have to stand up, put up my hand and say, I object, is this big old B chunk of leftover dumpster shit here. Because this is where I'm like, you gotta be a little bit more specific, in my opinion. So this is where, sorry, blasphemy to Lord Arslan. But what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put a C here. A C. And I'm going to immediately, just to give this list more definition, but again, this is my opinion, I'm going to put Gigas. I'm inclined to want to put Armor King there as well, but we're going to start with the most obvious examples. Okay, so there must be a little bit of separation here. In my opinion, Gigas is no longer the worst character in the game, but he's bottom 2. Lars is the worst character in the game, in my opinion. And that can be controversial to say, considering the bad defensive options Gigas has, and he has no movement. But he has an interesting power crush, and I see a few godlike Gigas players utilize the down 3+4 really well. Lars has better defensive options. His punishment is actually really good, and his movement is quite alright compared to Gigas. But Tekken 7 is a more offensive game rather than defensive. This game, due to the limited movement, favors offensive game, and due to the top characters being so safe. So Lars having a great 14 frame standing Punisher is not too much of a thing in this game, in my opinion. And Lars has no viable offensive options. His lows are terrible, his mids terrible, his poking terrible. When it comes to offense, this is the worst character in the game, I think, and the riskiest. Whereas Gigas actually, on a very basic and fundamental level, has a long-range jab, down forward 1, down 2, and down back 2 to get some frames with a low. Lars just doesn't have that very basic utility. Gigas can win tournament-level matches. Lars has the hardest time. I think Lars is the worst character in the game, actually. So Gigas, Miguel I find to be terrible. I think he has way too many range problems. unsafe, bad tools overall. So subpar compared to what we find up here. I find Miguel to be terrible, and I don't understand why they nerfed his Savage stance so much. Down back 3 and down forward 2. Certainly, they made Savage 2 safe, but that's not enough to compensate for what they did to those other options. And just range problems. Kuma and Panda, they have some good tools. They have some gimmick novelty that can win. We've seen that, but overall, good characters? Definitely not. Eddie is terrible. Eddie is he's so risky. And this is where, obviously, this is a pro player tier list. If you play in beginner and intermediate, you pull out your hair fighting Eddie. But trust me, as soon as that same Eddie player goes up against someone who knows the matchup, it's the Eddie player pulling out his hair, going bald. Like, you gotta just trust me on that one. So, that was some definition. And now I'm going to give it even more definition. I think we're gonna make, other row above. I'm gonna make an A, or B+. B+. That's cool. Because I feel we need an even higher degree of definition here. I simply can't see Hwoarang on the same level as Heihachi and Lei. He's way, or Katarina, he's way stronger than them. So at B+, I'm gonna make another tier, and I'm going to just take out characters I feel just are stronger than everyone else here. Kazuya is interesting because everyone is overhyping the character so much. He's top 5! He's top 5! What? It's like, I just recorded a video on Kazuya versus Devil Jin, who's the strongest, and in my opinion, Devil Jin, easily. People just look, I promise, people just look at the 50-50, and they say, Kazuya's stronger 50-50! He's the better character! So, those characters aren't just about 50-50s. That's a very simplified analysis. And I swear to God, like, I watched, like, King J's tier list, where he's talking to some guy called Landon, I think, and it's like, look what Kazuya gets from forward 3 and 50-50, and it's like, well, I've made a detailed video on it. But Kazuya is extremely overhyped, and you can't put high on a tier list a character that has ridiculous execution demands, terrible poking, has no defensive options, takes enormous risks every time he attacks. And I'm not only talking about while standing 2 being launch punishable, Hell Sweep being launch punishable, I'm talking about the fact that all of his good moves come out at 20 frames and he has no high crushing. What do you think all of these guys do to characters who do that? Oh, Magic 4, Magic 4. Oh, you know, Steve back 1, you know, all of these amazing highs. It's like, Kazuya needs ridiculously good execution and timing to do well. And he's not consistent, he's not safe. Is he still a great character? Yeah. Is he top 10? Absolutely not. So overhyped to a ridiculous degree. Asuka, Ganryu, Jack, Josie, Negan, Bob, Claudio, Master Raven. Now I feel we have more proper definition in the tier list. These characters, in my opinion, have a slight edge on the characters below. These characters, for various reasons, are just notably a little bit riskier and just lack the options these characters have. And these characters are literally quite... I mean, the game is very balanced, but these characters are obviously the worst, in my opinion. And there's no reason to post Kazuya next to Gigas in a tier list. or Horang for that matter. So yeah, this is how I would do with this tier list. If you want to correct it, if you want the Gandalf of Tekken to come and just wave his magic wand of 200 IQ knowledge, this is what it looks like. This is the corrected tier list. So, you know, Arslan comes with a tier list, and I go, fixed. Nah, but I'm just kidding. So it's like, I don't know what he meant with his tier list. If it's like, the game is so balanced that, you know, everyone goes into B. He nailed it perfectly with the top rows, in my opinion. But if I was just to do a little bit more of refinement, this is what I would do. And hopefully you got some interesting analysis of certain characters. I don't want to start talking about everyone because that takes forever. I just wanted to talk about the controversial picks. And also, I think King J, I don't know if King J did this, but he put, I'm going to do King J's tier list as well. But placing Heihachi like here, to me, it's just laughable. It's laughable. Heihachi is so much weaker than Kazuya and Devil Jin. There's no contest. But he's not bottom 5. He has the electric. So I hope you enjoyed my little tier list here. Big thumbs up to Arslan for giving us tier lists. It's so much fun to look at. And yeah, take care, everyone. Thanks for listening to me.